Hey, I'm going to show you the 7 hidden ways stress is quietly destroying your health, energy, and relationships. And more importantly, how to reverse every single one of them. This is the same process I used for over 25 years with everyone from executives and entrepreneurs to parents who thought they were just burned out. It's a proven system that retrains your nervous system to stop craving stress hormones and start using stress as fuel for focus, performance, and longevity. You don't need medication, you don't need therapy, and you definitely don't need to meditate for hours a day. It works for anyone with a busy, demanding life. And by the end of the video, you'll know exactly how to start rewiring your body and mind to eliminate chronic stress for good. Sound good to you? Let's jump in. Okay, let's dive into the 7 ways that silent stress is killing you. The sad thing is that most people think that stress is just feeling overwhelmed. But stress isn't just mental. It physically rewires your brain and body, triggering disease, chronic fatigue, and even premature death. This is what we're going to focus on in this video, is how it physically rewires your brain. This is an absolutely essential concept that stress is cumulative. And so what do I mean by that? I think a lot of people at least live their life, especially high performers, like there's not one bucket of stress, but that there's these separate buckets for each stressor. And so basically I've got my bucket for mental stress, how much mental stress I can take, how much systemic stress I can take, and how much physical stress I can take. But it doesn't work like that. All of these go into the same bucket. It's cumulative. So here's the big mistake I see people make is when they're mentally stressed out, right? Because most people relate to stress as a mental thing. Many of my high performers that I work with, they'll use physical stress or exercise as a way to combat mental stress. And I'm not saying there's not a place for exercise, because there is, in movement. But where I've seen it create more of a problem, especially long term, is if we're using intense exercise to manage stress. I've been rehabbing people's injuries for the last 20 years, as well as coaching high-level entrepreneurs and executives. And one of the things I can tell you is when someone would come in with a knee pain, a runner, let's say, and they would say to me, Matt, you've got to fix my knee. If I can't run tomorrow, I don't know if I'm going to make it, right? Like that's how much they were dependent on their running or their cycling or their exercising. That's a yellow flag. Okay, that's an addiction. Like we're not really solving the stress problem. We are managing the stress problem. And if we're managing it by something that's stressing the system, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when this overflows and we have all kinds of symptoms. So that's one thing I really want to drive home with this particular slide here. The other thing I want to make sure you're aware of is the systemic stress. So what do I mean by systemic stress? What I mean is anything that influences all the different systems of the body, whether it's metabolic, immune, reproductive, digestion, etc. So what are the big things that influence our systemic stress? Sleep obviously is one, huge one, sleep. What we eat, what we don't eat, do we get outside at all? Do we do anything throughout the day to just slow down and regulate our nervous system? And so just by taking some deep breaths, going outside, hugging a tree, so to speak, just getting in nature, like these things are so important. And if we're not doing those things, and then, or worst case scenario is, I'm really mentally stressed out, I haven't been sleeping well, and so I've kind of gotten off my diet, and the only thing that's making me feel right is going to that super intense spin class. It's like, oh man, that is a recipe for disaster. Like you're going to burn out, you're going to fall off the edge at some point in time. And so if you're having a rough kind of time mentally, that's the time you want to actually up-level. Hey, I got to make sure I'm getting to bed on time. I got to make sure that I'm eating right. I got to make sure that I'm getting some some sunlight, like anything I can do to help my system right now to manage, to counteract the mental stress. And then, oh yeah, maybe this isn't a week to exercise. Maybe this is a week to just get outside and go for a walk and just move a little bit, right? Because my system mentally is overloaded. So I need to do things here and here that help to decrease the overall load here, not add more stress to the equation, okay? So important. One of the biggest things I try to communicate to the clients that I coach, because I see this manifest in all kinds of dysfunction, injuries, digestive problems, you name it, metabolic problems, and on and on and on. And the reason for a lot of these things I'm going to share is that you have to understand that your body was built to survive, not to thrive. So in an emergency, stress shuts down non-essential functions, okay? So what are non-essential functions, believe it or not? Digestion, reproduction, and deep thinking. But when stress is chronic, your system gets stuck in survival mode, and that's when everything starts to break down, right? If we're stuck in a stress state, well, it's not a surprise that our digestive system's failing, our sex drive, our libido's gone, and we're very reactive, because that's what happens when you're in the stressed state. So one of the first things very specifically that happens when you're stressed is it shrinks your brain and wrecks your memory. And so over time, symptomatically, this leads to brain fog, poor focus, and increased Alzheimer's risk. Stress kills the brain cells and shrinks the hippocampus. And we're going to kind of get into that here in a little bit more detail. So, also important to understand that we're talking about long-term stress, okay? Stress response in short term is super beneficial and does the exact opposite of this. It actually improves all these things, right? You're sharper, your focus is sharper, like you're just more on point when it just comes on and then goes away. But we're talking about long-term stress, and one of the things that it does here is it shrinks your hippocampus, which is this part of your brain that's responsible for learning and memory, which is really interesting, right? So if you think about the stress state, when you're in a stress state, how much long-term, big picture thinking is important in that moment? Not much, right? Like when you're in a stress state, you're not thinking of anything except what's happening in that moment and how do I get out of pain or decrease my pain or discomfort in the moment. We become more susceptible to instant gratification. Okay, and we all know from many studies that delayed gratification is the key to long-term vitality and happiness. And so when we're stuck in this stress state, the very area of our brain that's responsible for learning and memory and is shut off, right? Like it starts to shrink. Okay. The other really interesting about your hippocampus is it also basically is one of the areas of your brain that that's responsible for predicting, what's going to happen in your day. And so your hippocampus has a mechanism that it has a certain expectation of what's going to happen one day in a day. And if those expectations aren't met, the hippocampus it reacts in a dysregulated way because, hey, what I expected to happen today didn't happen. So basically your hippocampus is basically where you keep your map of the world, and it's constantly assessing the map you're holding and evaluating the actual territory that you're in. So for example, if I have a map of Florida and I'm walking around in New Jersey, well, my hippocampus might start to be like, oh man, we got the wrong map. What we're expecting and how we're navigating the world right now doesn't match the world we're in. And so when your hippocampus shrinks, you actually start to lose touch with reality, right? Like you get disconnected to where you actually are. It's hard to assess, is the map I'm holding conducive to the current reality or territory that I'm in. So that's another really, really, really important piece here. And this is why anxiety, reactivity, and the fight or flight and freeze, increases. And so good news is we can bounce back because of neuroplasticity, which is basically the brain's ability to learn and upgrade its software, which is what we need to do. Okay, the second thing, silent killer of chronic stress, is it destroys your thyroid and your metabolism. I'm not going to go into this too much here because I've done some videos on thyroid. You'll find in my channel where I go deep into the whole thyroid piece and how stress impacts your thyroid and what to do about it and how to test for it, etc. But for this video, it's just important to understand that one of the non-essential functions is, keeping your metabolic rate really high. And you can think of it as, if I'm in a stress state, I'm gonna conserve energy. And so that's why stress slows your metabolism to a crawl. So we got low energy, weight gain goes up because I'm gonna store fuel. So I'm not really looking to burn any excess weight here. I want to hold on to that. And cold hands and feet, because again, all the energy is kind of coming to the center of the body. And so, and if your thyroid isn't working properly, neither is your body, because your thyroid's your engine. Okay. It basically is what it participates in the most efficient way your body makes energy. Okay. And so we're going to get into the whole adrenaline, cortisol, and thyroid difference of producing energy, but it's really important to understand that the optimal way for your body to produce energy as efficiently as possible is when your thyroid is in charge of producing energy through what's called oxidative metabolism. One quick thing I'll just point out here, and again, I go into this more in depth in the thyroid video you'll find on my channel, is that when you're in a stress state and cortisol and adrenaline are released, your stress hormones, one of the things cortisol does is it blocks your thyroid from secreting this T4, which is a inactive thyroid hormone. So it blocks that release, right? Because it's trying to decrease your metabolic rate, so it inhibits your thyroid. But the thing about T4 is it's supposed to convert over to T3, which is the active thyroid hormone. Well, cortisol also blocks that too. Okay, and so you can see why thyroid hormone production slows. And, we kind of get stuck in this loop, right? That just creates more stress, pushes your metabolic rate lower, which is stressful, and so on and so forth. But again, if you want to get more information on thyroid, make sure you check out that video on thyroid on my channel. The third silent killer is it weakens your heart and raises your blood pressure. So your body isn't meant to run on adrenaline. Like that's really important here. The idea that we want a secondary energy system becoming our primary energy system, there's a cost to that. Okay, and so yes, adrenaline and cortisol is super, super helpful when we need it. Okay, but if we stay in it too long, what happens is blood pressure starts to spike chronically because it's always on. Like your blood pressure will go up when the stress response happens, but if you stay in a state of chronic stress, well, now you have chronic blood pressure, high blood pressure, because it's not spiking anymore, it's just staying there. Arterial walls get damaged. Heart disease risk skyrockets, right? Because your heart never gets a break. Okay, and this is a kind of a way you can think about it. Here in Florida, we're in southern Florida, and so there's always a risk of hurricanes, and during hurricane season. And one of the things we do here in Florida is a lot of people have generators, right? And so it's a backup energy system. And so there's nothing better than knowing that you have that generator if you need it. And, if a hurricane comes and, our electricity gets knocked out, it's an amazing feeling to turn that generator on and get your lights back on, get your AC back on, be able to, turn your refrigerator on. You're like, oh, thank God for my generator. It's such a great moment. But after 3 or 4 days, you're like, okay, I think we're ready for the electricity to come back on, because, the generator is not as efficient. You can't power as many things. It's very loud, although some of them are gotten better, but it's loud. It smells. There's gasoline, right? It's just very inefficient long term. And so as amazing it is when we first turn those on, it's also just as amazing when we get to turn them off, okay? And that's exactly how you want to think about your stress response. It's really great when you need it, but you definitely don't want to be dependent on it. The fourth thing that stress does, silently does, is it wrecks your digestion. So when stress is high, digestion shuts down. We talked about that in the first slide because digestion is not essential when you're in fight or flight. The best analogy is when your body perceives that you're running from a lion, right? Fight or flight. It's worried about being eaten. It's not worried about eating, right? And so when we have a digestive system that's chronically been inhibited, well, here's all the symptoms, guys, right? Acid reflux, IBS, and bloating. And this one's really important here too, because nutrition deficiencies can happen because we're not eating. But more importantly, and this is so important to understand, is when you're in a stress state, you can eat the most nutritious, perfect diet, and your digestive system isn't working, so you don't even absorb the nutrients. And so even though you're eating really high quality food, you can't absorb it. It's kind of going right through you. And so because digestion shuts down, it actually blocks your ability to leverage or take advantage of the good food that you might be eating. Okay, and that's really important to know. And no matter how clean you eat, your body won't absorb what it needs. Man, that's a monster right there, right? This is where just, if you feel like you're in a stress state, one of the simplest things you can do is before you start eating, just pause and take, 2 or 3 cycles of a box breath, or, a 4-second inhale and a 6 to 8 second exhale. In other videos, I'll go into, all these different breathing techniques and what they do. But one thing you can think of, good little tip is, if you want to relax your nervous system, always make sure your exhale is longer than your inhale. So that's why I say 4 seconds in, maybe 6 to 8 seconds out. And a box breath just means every side of the breath, so to speak, is the same amount of time. So your inhale would be 4 seconds, then you pause for 4 seconds, then you exhale for 4 seconds, and then you pause for 4 seconds. So that's a box breath. And so either one of those techniques really, really helpful before you eat. It's also why it's good to kind of, there's the benefit of like saying a prayer or saying grace before you eat. Like just stop, pause, be grateful, take some deep breaths. Like this will actually help you absorb what you're about to eat, the nutrients. All right, number 5. I think everyone probably knows this one too well, but the other silent killer of chronic stress is it ruins sleep and energy. And obviously, if you have high levels of stress, it's like even when you go to sleep, you're kind of sleeping with one eye open. Like anything would jump you up. Or I know, I used to have this problem a lot, and I know a lot of my clients do. Well, they'll wake up at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and they're wide awake. Like they were like ready to go to work, right? And that's because there's a high level of cortisol and adrenaline floating in their system, which makes it very hard to relax and sleep, which then causes sleep deprivation and fatigue, which is really stressful, right? And so round and round we go. It's super frustrating when you get in this cycle. It's very difficult, right? And so it's like, where do I enter in here to break this cycle? And so, I would say there's all kinds of different things you can do to help, with sleep problems from a symptom standpoint, and there's some good ones there, and I'll share some of that with other videos and mention a few right now. But what's more important than anything is that you understand the big reason why you're stressed. That's my 5 pillars of what causes chronic stress. Again, you can find that on my YouTube channel. You really need to figure out which one of those 5 things is causing your problem. That's number 1. But some of the things you can do to help address the symptom of not sleeping, is some of the things I mentioned, like doing some breathing practices before you go to bed. Any of those breathing practices I just named would be great to do before you go to bed. turn off screens at least an hour before you go to sleep. I mean, I know you've probably heard that, but it's one thing to hear it. It's another thing to actually do it. And the last thing I'll say is a good way to help with sleep is actually when you wake up, gets the morning sunlight in your eyes. It actually starts your circadian rhythm and will actually make it easier for you to sleep at night. So those are just a couple little things you can do in conjunction with actually addressing the root cause. All right, number 6 silent killer is the imbalance of hormones. And you can probably see why this is already, but when stress raises your cortisol, key hormones crash. And so one thing to think about is every system that's not essential has a whole slew of hormones that it uses to help do the things that it does. And so obviously with the reproductive system, all the hormones that are responsible for your libido and sex drive, well, we don't need those. Like, this is not important. Like, when we're running from a lion, the last thing we're thinking about is reproduction, right? And so that's why you have low libido. Mood swings. Again, like, this is so important. When you're in a stress state, what you have is what's called a straw-like focus. And so you're kind of living your life through this very small hole. You're just seeing things in a very, myopic viewpoint. You've lost big picture. You've lost perspective. And so depending on what you're looking at in any one moment, the mood can be up, down, because every little moment is a different experience, right? Because I'm so intensely engaged in what's happening in that small little circle, I've lost the big picture view. So my mood's all over the place, right? I'm very reactive because I've lost perspective. All right. And then increased body fat. We talked about that a little bit before, but metabolic slows, conserve energy, store future energy. So, we'll gain weight. I can't tell you how many people that I've worked with over the years, helping them with weight. How many people said, man, I didn't start losing weight until I started eating. It's like, yeah, exactly. You got to get out of survival mode if you want your metabolism to heal. Your body wasn't built to survive on stress alone, and that's really kind of the theme here so far. And the downside of being, stuck in these chronic stress modes. All right, number 7, silent killer. I would say this one, boy, I work with a lot of people with relationships, especially high performers, a lot of family people, people with significant others, children, and boy, does chronic stress kill relationships. And it's because your nervous system shuts down emotional connection. So again, think about that, right? Like, why would the nervous system shut down emotional connection? Well, because emotional connection is an investment into the future. Right? Being emotionally connected to somebody and nurturing the connection, that's an investment into the relationship for the long term. Well, yeah, but I'm not thinking long term. I'm thinking about this one little moment in time right now. And so I don't have time to nurture relationship, right? And so this is why you can feel distant from loved ones, right? Or people that are stressed around you seem like they're in another world, because the nurturing in that moment is a long-term problem, right? It's not what the nervous system perceives to be the fire I need to put out right now. Like, oh no, that can wait. I need to deal with this right now, right? Well, that's why you can feel distant. Small problems trigger anger. Well, yeah. If I have someone in my life, a relationship who's asking for attention when I'm trying to put out this fire, or I perceive I'm putting out this fire, well, that triggers anger. It's like, oh my God, man, like I can't deal with this right now. Like I got these, like my head's on fire, and you're asking me to do something with you, or look my attention, right? You feel like you're getting pulled in all these different directions. Like there's a reason why, we're so reactive, right? And mostly because of what I've been saying. We lose perspective. We're not thinking long term anymore. And that's the other thing that's really important. When you're stressed, especially when you're stressed, your body's not thinking about the future. And what it will do is it will sacrifice long-term health, relationships, vitality to survive in the moment. okay? And this is exactly one of the things why it kills relationships, and why you mentally check out, right? Because you're exhausted. Running in survival mode is exhausting. So who has time to nurture stuff? Who has time to invest into the future? I just can't even think about it right now. Like, how many times have you heard yourself say that out loud or in your head? Like, I just can't deal with this right now, right? And so one of the things stress does is it doesn't only destroy your health, it destroys connection, okay? It destroys connection. And boy, it can sneak up on you. Like, 5-10 years, like you're just like, I'm just going to do this sprint. Like, I just got to make sure I make this money. And then once I make all this money and I feel safe, then I can nurture my relationships. It's like, yeah, it's too late, man. That garden wasn't nurtured for 5 years and there's nothing there anymore, right? It's sad. Very sad. And so one of the things I want to do really quick, I'm going to jump onto my vibe board and I'm going to kind of break down this idea of what stress does to relationships and it'll illustrate to you what I call the roommate syndrome. One of the biggest impacts the chronic stress cycle has is on our relationships. It's probably one of the most common areas I work with in my coaching practice. Now, when the system is thriving, okay, we have an ability to put our focus and be present with the people in our life, whether it's our significant other and or our children, because we have perspective, right? Remember, thriving allows us to see the big picture. Right? Our aperture is open. We can see things more clearly. As soon as the stress cycle begins, we lose focus, right? The stress cycle takes over for all of the reasons we've talked about in this thread, and now our attention is literally all over the place. We're in survival mode. So what does that mean? We're not present at all with the people that we're with. What are we doing? With the people in our life, we're giving them the bare minimum. I would say more often than not, especially with people that have been married, I call it roommate syndrome. It's all of a sudden your significant other, your spouse, turns into your roommate. You basically just share chores, but you never really connect. You're never really present with each other because you're both too busy. And this is true of both parties, right? Male, female, husband, wife. Great, and now we have two people kind of in this stressed out state, and we wonder why kids are in these highly anxious, ADD, and all this frantic state, because these kids, their nervous systems are tuned into what's happening in their environment, and they sense that something is off, right? And so this chronic stress cycle is contagious. I mean, it all starts with the family and then boils out into the community. So the stress cycle that we get stuck in is the reason why, or one of the biggest reasons why, you might be losing that deep, intimate connection with your loved one. All right. Number 8 is chronic stress speeds up aging. Something that I'm pretty sure anyone watching this is not interested in, right? We don't want to speed up our aging. But what they're finding really fascinating is stress damages your DNA and it shrinks these telomeres faster. And telomeres are these caps on top of your DNA that protect your DNA. And one of the things that signifies aging is how much the telomeres are worn away. And so this creates not only premature aging, but increases the risk of cancer and other diseases as well, because it weakens your immune system. So your body's literally aging faster than it should. And there's some actually really interesting tests now where you can see what your biological age is. Some people are like, no thanks, Matt, I don't think I want to know. It's like, well, it might be useful. It's also a good marker to when you start implementing these things, you can objectively measure like, oh my God, I'm slowing down the aging process. Like that's good feedback. It's good feedback. Number 9, another big one. Stress tricks you into thinking stress is normal. And the reason for this is, there's a couple of reasons. The first reason is your body is so good at adapting to any environment, right? And so if you stay in any environment long enough, even if it's super destructive and bad for you, if you're surviving, then your system's like, all right, cool. Like, this is our new normal. It's fine. We're surviving. Like, we're just going to call this normal. that's obviously not good long term, because again, like I said, it's not thinking long term. It's not thinking like, well, if we stay in this environment the next 5 to 10 years, like that would be really bad. It's not thinking like that. It's thinking like, okay, right now this is a little difficult, it's really tough. Oh my God, this really stinks. And then all of a sudden you're like, you know what? We can survive here. It's not that bad, right? This is so dangerous, because there's so many times people will be like, oh my God, this thing's happening. And they're telling me something destructive that's happening in their relationship, or something destructive that's happening in work or some community or environment, and all their alarm systems are going off, and they're being basically told, and their system is telling them, get out, like this is not safe, get out. But if you stay there long enough, and your nervous system's like, oh, we're still alive, I guess it's not that bad. I've, no joke, had conversations with people who were like telling me about something really terrible that's happening, a community they're involved in, all these red flags, this relationship, and they hang around long enough, and then all of a sudden, all those things that were huge red flags like weeks ago, they're like, you know what? It's not that bad. Like, I actually see how, these things are not so bad, and there's some benefit here. It's like, oh man, there's a window there where we had a chance to make some changes, but because the stress response adapts to its environment, being in a stress state and having your alarms go off starts to be called normal. Okay, very, very dangerous. And this is why I say most people don't realize they're running on stress hormones. And this is also a societal thing. So this is the other reason why. Is because, if you're drinking a bunch of coffee, if you have thousands of stimulants that you're taking, and you're eating, the same stuff, and you're drinking, and you drink alcohol to cool down because that's what everybody does, and everyone has coffee, and everyone's using these supplements, and everyone's taking this whatever, if everyone's doing it, man, well, it must be normal, right? And so normal definitely doesn't mean optimal or ideal. And just because everybody's doing something, well, everyone in that group is also getting sick very quickly, right? And so you gotta be careful with this idea of normal, right? Is it ideal? Is it optimal? Not is it normal. Don't be like everybody else, right? Especially in the US, man. Like, if you're normal in the US, you're sick. Like, that's what's normal in the US, is being sick. So if you're looking for something different, you gotta be abnormal relative to what most people are doing. So yeah, they think that low energy is just a normal thing, right? Like, all these things, just lots of excuses as to why these things are happening. Don't settle. Don't settle. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump back onto the whiteboard, and I want to talk about this idea of the myth of normal, and go into this idea of normal a little bit more, and actually talk about one of my favorite books by one of my favorite people on the planet, Dr. Gabor Mate, and the name of his book was The Myth of Normal. So let's jump on the board. Like Gabor Mate pointed out in his best-selling book, The Myth of Normal, Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture, this idea of normal has been completely distorted in the Western world. And what I want to talk about here is piggyback on Gabor's idea that normal, what we've accepted as normal now, is totally abnormal, and actually the way the body was designed to operate. The ideal scenario and the way the body was designed was for us to thrive. All systems go: metabolism, digestion, reproductive system, energy levels, motivated, inspired. Body should feel strong and resilient. That's actually normal. Well, let's just go with ideal here. Now, some of us haven't really had an experience of thriving, okay? So we have nothing to relate it to, right? But for those of us that may have had some times where we felt thriving, it's important to remember that that's actually the normal. But what happens is we step out of the thriving experience and we spend too much time down here in the stress state, right? This stress state is now what we believe is the new normal, right? This chronic stress cycle, round and round we go, causing all types of symptoms, and we just relate to it as normal because here's how your brain works by default. It only thinks about what's happening in a finite amount of time as, oh, this is normal. This is the way it's always been. It forgets that there was another experience of life. It's like, oh yeah, I do think I remember waking up and not feeling pain all over my body, but this is my new normal. But what I'd like to share with you guys is it's not, okay? This stress, the chronic stress cycle is what's creating all these symptoms that has us believe that being dependent on caffeine, running around like chickens with our heads cut off, busy, thousands of things to do, can't slow down, our kids don't talk to us, they're pissed off, my husband, my wife, you know them, they're angry with me, we don't really see each other, well, you know, that's normal, I'm stressed out of my mind, I got 3 hours of sleep, you know, who sleeps well these days? Everybody's stressed. Stressed is the new normal. Normal is not optimal and it's not ideal, okay? Don't get caught up in this dysfunction, this myth of normal because our culture is toxic. Don't fall prey to settling for being dependent on stimulants, medications, drugs, supplements, etc., etc. Remember back to the time where you might have felt like you were thriving, okay? Start to get out of this stress cycle. We need to step out of the stress cycle, and we have to remember that this is actually what's normal, not being stressed out. So I hope you can see why I say most people don't even realize they're addicted to stress, right? Because we've normalized it, and because we don't realize that stress is not just mental, it's chemical. Like we're changing as a biochemical level, and it gets to the point where the body craves stress hormones like a drug because that's all it knows. This is the new normal. And so here's why breaking free feels impossible, and I'm going to share with you what actually works here. But it is addicting. Like stress is addicting. And so we got to know how to break the cycle. The usual stress fixes don't work, all right? And that doesn't mean that meditation, deep breathing don't have a place, but this is not going to get you where you're trying to go, okay? A lot of these things are just Band-Aids because they're temporary reliefs. We're not addressing the actual problem. Okay, and so I'm going to jump one more time on my board here and explain this whole idea of why these fixes don't work and what actually does. Okay, so here we are in our stress cycle, right? This quote-unquote new normal that creates a ton of new symptoms, right? These new symptoms very easily become whack-a-mole, right? We've got headaches, we've got low libido, we got overweight, irritable bowels, poor sleep, hormone imbalance. But don't worry, we got pills, supplements, we got meditation we can do, deep breathing techniques, all these different techniques and modalities that in themselves aren't bad, okay? I don't want you to hear me wrong. They're not bad. But if we don't address the actual problem here, it literally becomes whack-a-mole, and we are hitting a low libido with something. Then we're like, oh my God, my headache, let me go meditate, right? And then the next thing happens, and the next thing happens. My thyroid's in the tank. I just got my blood work, and now I got to go on all these supplements and medications, and round we go. And we're talking about lots of money here, when what you need to start to focus on is how do I step out of this cycle? So here's the big takeaway that I want you to ingrain in your brain. Stop trying to manage stress. Stress is not something you manage, okay? Managing happens when you can't handle life's demands, and so I call it kicking the can down the street, right? It's like, let me breathe and meditate for a couple minutes to get me through the day. Let me go exercise and do my run to get me through the day. I just need that coffee to get me through the day. I just need to, have a glass of wine, take the edge off to get me through the day. All of these things are managing stress, right? Taking medication, taking supplements, all these things are treating symptoms. If you want to actually eliminate stress at the source, you got to train yourself to use stress as a tool. And that's so important, okay? We cannot let stress control us. We have to learn how to partner with it, okay? If you stop thinking of stress as the enemy and start to understand that stress is your ally, but you have to learn how to work with it. And one of the first steps that you got to learn how to do is how to process and eliminate and integrate emotions. And so why do I say emotions? It's because emotions are the communications that stress the stress is using to tell us what's going on. It's the language of stress, right? And so there's videos here on my YouTube channel where I go into how to decode emotions and what is overwhelm telling us, and how do we integrate this information that overwhelm is telling us? What is anxiety telling us? What is stress telling us? What is hopeless telling us? What are these emotions telling us? Because they're all part of the stress communications, right? Physiological symptoms are stress communications. Whether it's like I have tension in my neck, my stomach hurts, and most of those sensations are also correlated to emotions. So you have to understand how to process and integrate emotions. What you don't want to do is and I apologize if you're watching this and I taught you this, when I was part of a personal development organization, what I was teaching people is, hey, feel your emotion, never ask why you're feeling it, breathe and let it go. Terrible, 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 terrible information. And so if I ever taught you that, I'm sorry. Don't do that anymore. You do not want to push away the thing that's trying to help you, right? It's like blaming the fire alarm for the fire. If your fire alarm goes off, don't treat the fire alarm. It's telling you that there's a fire somewhere. Okay? And so you need to process and integrate the communication that's coming through, right? Then once you get this information, then you got to train and learn how to respond to the stress, or better said, respond to the problem that the stress is pointing at. Because stress response, all it's doing is it's telling you there's a problem we need to solve. In some of my other videos here on my channel, we talk about open loops and how all these problems are just open loops that the brain is looking at and saying, hey, this is a threat. It's an open loop. It's a problem we haven't solved for. I'm going to keep pointing this out until we solve it, right? And so you have to learn how to identify the problem and start solving for it. That's how you train your response to stress. And then the third one, and this is in order of importance, is you do need to fix your metabolism and your energy, right? We got to get our system back online with some of those things that I said. So complementary, when you're learning these other things, make sure you're getting outside. Make sure you're going for walks. Make sure that you're taking some deep breaths before you eat. Make sure you're eating healthy foods, right? Like all the things that I think we all know, that are helpful to us. But that's a very important part of this, and making sure we have good sleep routines. So these are the things that will actually treat chronic stress, okay? Not shutting off your emotions, not managing stress. These are things that will just have you in this never-ending loop until something finally really breaks. I've spent the last 25 years helping people with this, okay, without meds, therapy, or endless self-care routines. I've worked with over 500 high performers to everyday people, guiding them to retrain their nervous systems and reclaim their health. And not only retrain their nervous systems, but teach them what their nervous system's trying to communicate. Again, your nervous system is communicating something. What is it communicating? How do we integrate the communication so that our nervous system can relax, right? And that's how people can reclaim their health. So if you're interested, if you've tried a lot of stuff, and you're still stressed out, you've tried therapy, meditation, self-care, It's because you've been solving the wrong problem. I call it you're hitting the bullseye on the wrong target, okay? Most people never get this information that you're getting in this video. But if you want the exact process on how to eliminate stress at the root and customize it for you, I'll show you how. Jump on a call with me. It's a 1-hour consultation. I'll help you break the stress cycle and turn it into fuel without meds or endless self-care, okay? This hour session, we'll go through some of those 5 pillars. We'll pinpoint the actual cause here, okay? So that we can start to rewire the chronic stress response that's really wrecking your life in so many ways. Now, at the time of recording this video, I have 7 spots left in my calendar on my schedule to do these one-on-one consults. So I probably won't have 7 by the time this video is published, but if you're hearing this, I still have some spots, right? And so this is a limited time, you know, so make sure to get your breakthrough. So the way you can engage here is, so if you're interested, you can get your breakthrough session by clicking the link in the description. You'll fill out a qualifying questionnaire. Okay, I want to make sure that we're a good fit. So it takes about 3 minutes and it also gives me some information so I can prep for your call. And then you'll immediately take it to my calendar and you can book a time on my calendar and no charge. No charge at all. This approach has changed everything for me and for hundreds of other people. I've seen people break free from stress, burnout, and meds, reclaiming their energy, clarity, and purpose without good old Big Pharma's solutions. And so before we end here, I want to know, what's your biggest struggle related to chronic stress? Leave a comment on the video below, and I'll personally reply to you with advice. All right? And if this video was helpful and you found it useful, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Make sure to like and share this video so we can get this information out to people. Liking and sharing it, commenting, all those things help promote my channel. And I want nothing more than to get this information out to as many people as possible. Thanks so much. One of the biggest impacts the chronic stress cycle has is on our relationships. It's probably one of the most common areas I work with in my coaching practice. Now, when the system is thriving, okay, we have an ability to put our focus and be present with the people in our life, whether it's our significant other and or our children, because we have perspective, right? Remember, thriving allows us to see the big picture, right? Our aperture is open. We can see things more clearly. As soon as the stress cycle begins, we lose focus, right? The stress cycle takes over for all of the reasons we've talked about in this thread, and now our attention is literally all over the place. We're in survival mode. So what does that mean? We're not present at all with the people that we're with. What are we doing with the people in our life? We're giving them the bare minimum. I would say more often than not, especially with people that have been married, I call it roommate syndrome. It's all of a sudden your significant other, your spouse, turns into your roommate. You basically just share chores, but you never really connect. You're never really present with each other because you're both too busy. And this is true of both parties, right? Male, female, husband, wife, great. And then we have two people kind of in this stressed out state, and we wonder why kids are in these highly anxious, ADD, and all this frantic state, because these kids, their nervous systems are tuned into what's happening in their environment, and they sense that something is off, right? And so this chronic stress cycle is contagious. I mean, it all starts with the family and then boils out into the community. So the stress cycle that we get stuck in is the reason why, or one of the biggest reasons why, you might be losing that deep, intimate connection with your loved ones.